We spoke to someone at the course and he said, on the way here, the taxi driver said, the Mighty Don wins today. Hello and welcome along to the Let's Talk Racing YouTube channel. What a brilliant 3 days we had at the Cheltenham November Meeting. Me and Andrew were both there, and I just wanted to say a big thank you to all those who came up and were very kind. It's quite rewarding meeting people that enjoy the podcast, that watch the podcast when we've been making this behind a screen during COVID, and now we're able to go on the race course. It was brilliant, so thank you very much to all of those who did come out and speak to us, especially Andy and Sam were legends. We did promise you a shout out in the next video, so we've done that. It was just a great 3 days though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was brilliant to be over there, as you say, for myself, who haven't seen too much national hunt racing over the last 18 months live, and to get over for those 3 days with my dad, and to see yourself and to see a few other guys from Racing Twitter, and then obviously to see a few people come up to us and be very nice and very appreciative we are of those nice comments. It obviously makes it all very worthwhile, and hopefully we're building some sort of community. I was shocked, actually, really. I was expecting, if I was to meet people, that it might be younger, but it was younger, it was middle-aged, it was maybe slightly older at times, it was everyone, and it was really, as you say, rewarding to see so many people have such nice words to say, so we can only thank you enough.
Thank you very much. Over the next half an hour, we're going to try and dissect every single race at the Cheltenham November Meeting. To start with, we'll be hopefully highlighting future winners, maybe winners at the Cheltenham Festival. Before looking ahead to this weekend's racing, we've got Grade 1 action at Haydock in the Betfair Chase. It looks a decent field for that. We're still not sure on weather, ground conditions, and we don't have decks for that yet, but we'll try our best to pick the winner. Over at Ascot, we've got multiple Grade 2s, and over in Ireland, we've also got a Troytown handicap chase. Very competitive, plenty of prize money on offer. So good racing to get stuck into, and as always, our best bets in there as well. So let's get things started. Cheltenham, Day 1. We opened up with, for me, a big disappointment. One of my best bets was beaten, Scatman. To me, it just didn't look like he suited Cheltenham very much. Art Approval was a good winner. We're at Fergal's in the morning. I wish we got the wink with that one. I don't think he will be winning at the festival, but I think the one to take from this personally is my Bobby Dazzler. At the start of this clip, you'd see that he was out the back. He actually stayed on to finish a close fourth, well, not close fourth, he was beaten 10-15 lengths or so, but he stayed on to finish fourth. He passed plenty of horses in the straight, and I suspect up in trip and down in grade will be a good combination, and he'll be winning soon. Did you take anything from this?
Yeah, as you say, I think Art Approval did it very nicely on the day. Fergal's ran well all weekend. A horse that I'd probably give another chance to is Neon Moon for the pipes. He actually travelled into the race. You'd have seen from the video him backing out of the race, the big grey horse, but he travelled into the race like probably the best thing there, and just stopped as if shot with around a furlong and a half to go. Maybe a little bit down in trip. Second time out this season, he'll go very close.
Second race was a 2-mile handicap chase, and Editeur du Gite, who we put up on here, was very impressive. I thought Niall Houlihan, he's gone right up in my estimation. The conditional jockey gave him a brilliant ride. They went hard from the front, and then he slowed it right down the back straight. He let him roll down the hill and kicked again, turning for home. And he just crawled over the line, but he got the job done. I think if I'd backed Stolen Silver, would have felt hard done by the way that he travelled into the race. Probably yes. It's difficult now with Editeur du Gite because he's going to be hard to place. Were you more keen with Stolen Silver or Editeur du Gite going forward?
No, I thought the winner was maybe a little bit more value for that winning margin than a neck. I know he was tired near the end there, but at the end of the day, he's made an awful lot of his own donkey work. I think probably overall, in a higher grade, he's going to need a flatter track than Cheltenham to probably be seen to best effect, and that's where, as you say, a track like Newbury could well play into those strengths. But he's a very good horse. Interesting, like if he went up to 146, 147, you might roll the dice at one more handicap chase, see if you can land another big pot, and then, as you say, go on and maybe run in a couple of grade 2s near the end of the season and see whether you can improve. But he's still a young chaser, so that improvement may still be there.
Absolutely. Race 3 was only 2 runners, Gin on Lime and My Droga making his chasing debut, and I must admit, we were there, stood in the grandstand, and they were coming down to the second last, and I just looked at the horses rather than the big screen, and I thought they both fell. I was amazed at what Rachel Blackmore did when watching the replay back. to have that balance going at that speed is just ridiculous. But my Drogo, for me, look, he was going to win very impressively, I don't doubt that, but I wasn't in love with his jumping. He jumped okay, he jumped fairly well, but I don't think he was an incredible jumper. He looks a great specimen in person, but he kept jumping out to his right ever so slightly. He was a bit guessy at a few. He'd have learnt a lot. But I think he's going to go back to Cheltenham for the December meeting. Dan is not worried about the track. He was definitely going to win. He's definitely a good horse, and the engine is there. But I do want to see him take defences again. Gin on Lime probably have to do more to win a Mayor's Chase.
Oh, much more, yeah. This is the only thing I'd say about my Drogo. As you say, I'd be maybe a little bit more optimistic about his jumping. I thought it was okay, but Gin on Lime's jumping was absolutely brutal. And to be honest, I know she was going to get beat, but she was running to 10 pounds below her best over there. I thought she didn't look herself whatsoever, jumping out to her right markedly at times. She's never shown the tendency to do that before, so she's certainly, maybe she's just seeing the ill effects of maybe a pretty hard summer at this stage, and she maybe needs a little bit of a freshen up before coming back for March. But I'd have a few more ahead of her in the Mayor's Chase list, that's for sure.
Diesel Dahlia in the cross country was 2 lengths clear at the last. I couldn't believe he was beaten, but his target is that same race in December. That will be his Gold Cup, and I think the trainer Richard Bandy was delighted with the run. That would be my takeaway from the race. I think he will win in December. Do you agree?
Yeah, I know Richard Bandy's every entitlement to be delighted. I wasn't overly delighted when he was 2 lengths clear with 100 yards to go and somehow got swamped. But he ran a brilliant race. Obviously, Singing Banjo ran a fantastic race for Philip Rothwell. He'll be in and around in those punches-down races come the end of the season. And I thought, obviously, Balco de Flo travelled into the race really well for a horse that was carrying a mammoth weight. You'd assume the Grand National's the long-term aim with him. Whether he can win one or not is maybe beyond him, but he travelled into the race plenty well enough.
And race 5 was the Ballymore trial, kind of. Blazing Carl was good for Charles Burns. I know you put him up, you liked him. And he just had plenty of speed for Jelena Bello in the end, who I think you could imagine going back to Aintree for the 3 mile Grade 1 novice hurdle there and the Grand National meeting, where he's obviously made his hurdling debut at Aintree over 2.5, and I do think that 2.5 is his minimum trip. He'll be better over 3, and he's a good horse. And I think Jelena Bello did run well, just came up against a more speedier rival in Blazing Carl. You were impressed. How far can he rise?
Oh, I think he'll run in the Bartlett, that's for sure. He's got every entitlement to go over and run in it. I thought it was a very taking performance from the winner. I thought the rest of them weren't up to a whole pile. To be honest, Blazing Cal didn't jump a single twig all the way round, and as one pulling double, really. Tony McInerney only needed to, push him out for 50, 100 yards at the back of the last, and he's won the race very impressively. So I think he might be a smart horse for Charles Burns, and fingers crossed gets campaigned as much, and maybe he'll take in that Nathaniel Lacey race, the 2 mile 6 at the Dublin Racing Festival before going on to the Bartlett.
And then finally the 2 mile handicap hurdle. Now, I'm a big fan of Paddy Brennan. He obviously has ridden under Le Seigneur to win 3 times. Super jockey. But talk to me about City Derby.
Well, he just seemed to go very wide, and I know it's Paddy's want, obviously, at Cheltenham, that he does sit near enough last and near enough the widest, but with City Derby, obviously there was a bit of a concertina effect, and he managed to find himself coming into the straight 10, 12 wide. He was almost touring Bristol and Tewkesbury on the way home, but he obviously ran a very good race to come fourth. His stablemate Castle Gandolfo ran an extraordinary race to come second, considering he didn't jump either. And McAlpine was a good winner for Philip Rothwell, but I suspect that might have been his big day in the sun.
Yeah, I would definitely upgrade that City Derby performance going forward. I think he will be winning races this season, and he is better than his mark. Moving on to the Saturday, and the first race was the Triumph Hurdle Trial, won by Night Salute. Now I'm going to say it now, I thought it was a bang average race. Magistrato didn't look to suit Cheltenham, a bit like Scatman, and in those first 2 days all of the Nichols horses didn't look like they were seen to best effect around Cheltenham. I think the race isn't great. I think it's quite poor in terms of a Grade 2 juvenile, and Night Salute, fair enough, he's won it quite well. I just don't think that he'll be featuring in a Boodles, let alone a Triumph Hurdle, personally. What about yourself? Yeah,
it just didn't look a massively great race, especially when Magistrato didn't run well. Obviously the second horse has been a little bit exposed. Gary Moore's horse Yorksea ran okay in third. He'll probably win a juvenile hurdle sometime soon. But the winner was good, and Milton Harris has actually built up a bit of a reputation in recent weeks and over the last year and a half of placing his younger horses really, really well, and he's placed this horse superbly to get a Grade 2 win into him. But I wouldn't think Grade 1 honours are just knocking on the door yet.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that. The next race was the Amateur Riders Handicap Chase. Christian Williams took it with Strictly a Dancer, and I was speaking to him yesterday morning at the Newbury Gallops, and he said that he's going to be back out this weekend, as he could be one of those, a bit like Udo Mas, who just wins and wins and wins and is well ahead of the mark. I do think he thinks there's improvement to come. To me, it was remarkable. He looked like he just joined in 3 out at Cheltenham. He won fairly cosily, never really looked in danger, and Strictly a Dancer was a good winner and backed up that win at the October meeting. How far ahead of his mark is Strictly a Dancer?
Yeah, it's hard to know because he's only doing the bare minimum when he gets to the front at Cheltenham. Twice now he's ended up being in there probably earlier than you'd ideally want him to get to the front. I don't know whether it's slightly sour grapes that I backed him the one time this year that he hasn't won, but he certainly looks to be a really improving horse, and you never know, if he got another win or two into him, he might rock up again in a amateur riders race come the festival. I don't know whether he'd be quite good enough for that, but if he was to sneak in off a low weight and get a good Irish jockey on him, he might have a sniff.
Cheltenham form obviously vital. Her race 3 was Third Time Lucky, and I don't think he was as good as he was at the October meeting. His jumping was still very good, and he still tanked his way into the race. But Harry Skelton made a very keen point, it seemed early on, to try and refrain him from going to the front too soon, but he took it up virtually in the same part of the race he did in October. Sebastopol was ridden to pick up the pieces, given an Eldorado Allen ride. Sandown's next. Edwardstone was good at Warwick today, he might go there. Dusart, interestingly, makes his chasing debut at Kempton in the same race that Shishkin and Altior made their chasing debuts on Monday. When Nicky came out at the start of the season and said that he was going to stick to hurdling because he's so inexperienced, that plan looks well off, and his schooling's been very good. Dusart, could he be one lurking? And maybe Nicky's looked at that 2-mile chasing division, especially this side of the Irish Sea, and maybe he's gone, there's an opportunity there, and Dusart could fill that void. Third Time Lucky, I think he's going to have tougher tasks coming up. Is he going to be successful in them? What did you think?
Look, he was okay. He jumped super, I'll give him that. He's a wonderful jumper of events, but I don't think beating Sebastopol 4 lengths, and personally speaking, I'd have thought Captain Dom Cat had Sebastopol beaten at the last, so he'd have been beaten 2 or 3 lengths maybe, and that's not brilliant form. So I'd say Third Time Lucky will have to come forward an awful lot from that.
The big one on the weekend was the Paddy Power Gold Cup, and it was won by Midnight Shadow. The winner got his day in the sun. He's threatened to do that for a long time, and Saturday was his day. Protectorat staying on stoutly at the end to finish second. And if you look at the top of the hill, Protectorat was probably 3 or 4 lengths down on Midnight Shadow, but coming down the hill, Midnight Shadow just had too much pace for him and really put distance between him and Protectorat, and that was ultimately the reason why Protectorat couldn't get there. I think Skelter gave him a good ride. I just think he's a 3-miler, and it looks like they're going to go to the Many Clouds next, the listed race, or the Grade 3, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but he'll come up against Champ there. That could be fascinating, maybe an itchy feat as well. Is he good enough to maybe creep into a Gold Cup picture?
I don't think he's good enough to creep into a Gold Cup picture. Would he be good enough to creep into a Betway Bowl picture? Would be maybe a different story. He was obviously very good at Aintree last year, winning the Grade 1 Novices Chase, and I'd say he might be campaigned down that sort of gist of things. I thought he ran a storming race, obviously off such a big weight. I think there was heaps of eye catchers in behind. It was such a strange race. They went so hard up front that obviously you had horses paddling come the finish, and then horses closing off. The horse I put up, Galahad Quest, I think he will win one of these big handicaps at some stage and might rock up at a price as well. Just didn't seem to have the race nous to go and do it. And I'm also convinced that Philip Hobbs' horse, Zanza, is well handicapped. He needs to sort out his jumping, but he seems to blow home with a wet sail every single time, so you'd think at some stage he might get a day in the sun as well. But 2 of those horses maybe who finished I think 5th and 6th respectively might have big handicaps in them this year.
Race 5 was the 3-mile listed handicap hurdle, and it didn't feature Dragon Bones unfortunately, but we maybe saw a Cheltenham clue in Sporting John, who I did think was very good He looked like he knew his job. He looked a much better hurdler than he did chaser. And now he's won that, he's kind of in between a rock and a hard place, in the sense that ideally, if I'd owned him, I'd have finished 6th in a Pertemps qualifier and gone and ran that race at Cheltenham in the Pertemps final. But now he's probably going to have to step into the Stayers hurdle picture, given it's so weak. Is he quite good enough for that? I'm not sure. We'll have to find out, and I'm sure down the line we will. That looks the route they'll go. I would be very surprised if they weren't to stick with hurdles. And he might be too high in the handicap to go for something like the Pertemps, especially having to qualify and all that palaver. You compare him maybe to a horse like On the Blind Side, who's not good enough to win the Stayers hurdle, but wins listed races and grade 2s. I think he's better than him, but I'm not sure he's time hill yet. So it's going to be interesting. Sporting John definitely put his name in the hat, and he's still 25 to 1, 20 to 1 for the Stayers, and I think that's fair. I expected him to be maybe 16s. The moment it happened, you went, yeah, I like that. That was something that is encouraging and something we can look forward to down the line for March. Did you agree with that?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good performance off top weight, really, and as you say, just looked a more streetwise horse. He's been a funny horse to follow. You know, it's been so good at times, it's been so bad at times, but it was certainly one of those good days. And you'd like to just think at this stage you'll be campaigned like a good 3 mile hurdler. Like I look at a race like the Cleve Hurdle, say in January time. Like, who on earth is going to turn up in that race? Time Hill won't go there. He'll go to Ascot and then straight on to Cheltenham. And you look at the rest of them, you know, the horses that ran in that West Yorkshire hurdle a couple of weeks ago at Wetherby, like, he's a better horse than any of them. Prashima was in second, Indefatigable won the race. You're going, that's not great form at all. So if he won a Cleve hurdle, a grade 2 over course and distance of the Stayers hurdle, then you'd have to go on and run in the Stayers, and maybe wouldn't be without a shout. Just because, again, the English division isn't very good. He looks to have exploited it well, and he looked very good. Dragon Bones, obviously disappointing. She was my nap of the week, being a non-runner. I would look out for her, though she is well handicapped off 132, and on a Gathering Storm running so well behind Sporting John somewhat enhanced the form yet again.
So he definitely put his name in the hat. We might find more out before the festival. Race 6 was a 2.5 mile handicap hurdle, and Gowral Road, who I was keen on, maybe less so than Breffney Boy, won the race, and he was given a very similar ride to Double Ross, who had a very similar profile going into this race in 2012. A suspect stayer, a second season hurdler, and he was given a very, very aggressive ride by Sam Twiston-Davies. I think this horse is definitely a Coral Cup contender. I think that's the route they'll go. I think they've seen 2.5 miles in a handicap around Cheltenham's ideal. He'll definitely be high enough in the weights to run in the race. And another performance like that would put him bang in the picture, in my opinion. I did think that he was one to take and look at the festival with. Unexpected Party for the Skeltons, I think, is well ahead of his mark, who finished second as well. And I just think Sam Twiston-Davies rode the rest to sleep. Harry Skelton came away from the pack on Unexpected Party, and the winner got away. They were never getting to him. And kind of take the winner out of the picture, I know it's hard to do. Unexpected Party is definitely a good horse and will be winning races coming up. But Gowral Road, do you think that he could maybe threaten the Coral Cup market?
Yeah, I suppose the one thing that would just slightly concern you is I actually quite fancied the horse for the County Hurdle last year, and he ran no type of race. Now, maybe another year on his back, more experience, and I was with you. I thought he was really impressive. He was one of the more impressive winners of the entire weekend, because, as you say, I think that Unexpected Party's got heaps of races to be won with him. I think Ollie's horse in third, Mackleduff's got heaps of races to be won, and yeah, good time Johnny can't jump a twig, unfortunately, but I'm sure he'll be winning races if he can jump as well. So I'd have thought it wasn't a bad little race, actually, and he's made them look pretty ordinary in behind, so I'd taken that as a very good performance.
And then the bumper, we won't go into too much detail on this. 2 smart prospects for Fergal O'Brien. Bonte won the bumper at the Cheltenham October meeting. She's now 2 from 2 around Cheltenham in bumpers. Look, I think they're good, but I don't think they're superstars. But 2 nice mares to go to war with for Fergal O'Brien. We'll move on then to the Sunday. Oscar Elite was going very, very well in this 3 mile novice chase before crashing out 3 out. What did you make of his performance up until then, and do you think he was going to win?
Yeah, I think overall he probably was going to win. Now, obviously, I'm a big fan of 300 through 5, so you'd like to hope he'd have found a little bit more out in front, but I thought Oscar Elite was super. I know some people were there saying he was novice all the way around. I thought he jumped super, as novices go for a 3-mile race. Look, in the end, you're coming down to that fence at 3 out. It's a tricky one downhill. Brendan Powell asks him for a big one, and to be honest, it's one of those do or die ones. If he got that big jump, he lands, I'd say, a half length down on 300 through 5, might nip up his inside, and then the race could be won in that manoeuvre. Instead, he puts down, makes a bad enough fall, but he'll win plenty of races, Oscar Elite. 300 through 5, I'm ticking away with my National Hunt Chase dream with him, to be honest. I thought he put in a nice, assured display. He is as slow as anything. So I've got Bardenstown lad and I've got this lad, who are both two of the slowest horses in training. But at least 300 through 5, he jumped quite nicely. He keeps finding, and if there is any race at Cheltenham, it will be the 3-mile 6 race.
And you suspect he'll definitely go to that National Hunt Chase as well. I just don't think he's top class, and I still don't like the horse. Race 2. The nap of my weekend came in the form of the Mighty Don, who I put up at 16 to 1 each way, albeit 16 to 1 each way. Went off 5 to 2 favourite. I thought, here we go. There's only 7 in the race. We spoke to someone at the course and he said, on the way here, the taxi driver said, the Mighty Don wins today. I still went, I'm going to take something from that. He's on there as well. I hope that taxi driver has a good day, just like me. And he didn't jump great. And then down the back the first time around, I don't know what he did at the water jump. Niall Houlihan, who rode Editor Jujit, lost his irons. A brilliant recovery, by the way. Didn't seem to lose much ground at all. And got them back, which was fantastic. I thought, here we go, it's meant to be. He then started jumping quite well, outpaced, which I expected. He stayed up the hill, and the VT that I showed you last week of him finishing behind Happy Go Lucky, he was miles outpaced, but stayed on to the line, and that was happening. He then stayed on all the way up the straight. He jumped the second last really well. He was flying home, probably 2 or 3 lengths down coming into the last, and I think he'd have got there. And then he ploughs through the fence, all momentum stops, and my dreams shatter, before then rallying again and finishing a length behind Yalarenki, the winner. Maybe Yalarenki would have pulled out more, but I personally believe that if the Mighty Don had jumped the last well, kept the momentum going, I don't see how he wouldn't have won the race, or wouldn't have gone very, very, very close. Didn't happen. That's for another day. And you know what? I'm going to hold my hands up now. I can easily see the Mighty Don becoming a cliff horse of mine, but I'm going to take that out of the question. I'm going to let him go. Learn when to do that. I've been meaning to learn when to do that with the likes of Third Time Lucky. I nearly gave up on him, but the Mighty Don is firmly out the picture. We gave him one chance, and one chance only. If he wins again, he wins again, but it won't be with my money on. The Mighty Don has been let go. Just love to swiftly move on, Andrew, if I'm honest.
Yeah, it was an entertaining watch, that's for sure. He just doesn't jump well enough, and I think probably given the way he ran, I think he'll be a wise guy's horse next time, so he won't get any type of price in the first place. So I think it's probably best off leaving him. Horses that need 3.5 miles over fences but cannot jump fences, it doesn't usually end up working out.
Still gives me shivers. Let's move on to the Schlur Chase. And Nube Negra, on a positive note, I needed picking up, and Harry Skelton was the man. Nube Negra, in my opinion, has improved. He was a brilliant jumper, and he's not the biggest champion chaser in the world. Like, I was there in the pre-parade ring, and Put the Kettle On made him look small, but he's tidy, he's put together well, and he's a fantastic jumper of a fence. I do think he's not far off going into that Chacun Pour Soi, Enigamine and Shishkin picture. I think out of any other horse in the 2-mile champion chase division, I would expect him to maybe get into there, and it's going to be fascinating. I really hope we see Nube Negra take on Shishkin, or even one of those Irish boys, maybe in the Tingle Creek, maybe in the Desert Orchid at Kempton. I think he's really good. I was very impressed with him, and it was polished, it was a good ride, He really galloped through the line. There was a lot to like, and Put the Kettle On probably ran the same race that she ran last year. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, she just looks laboured. Now, I know from her owners talking that over 2 miles on good ground, she's always been a little bit exposed and she's a little bit out on her head and probably needs 2.5 on that type of ground and soft to heavy ground over 2 miles. So that was always likely to happen, but like, I still think, and that was my reasoning behind putting him up last weekend with Politolog. Like, Politolog's still a very solid stick. You know, he's no world beater. We all know he's no world beater, but he's a very solid horse. He's a grade 1 horse. And I think he ran to his racing, to be honest, Politolog. He made one mistake at 4 out, which didn't help, slightly halted his momentum. But other than that, he ran a very, very respectable, perfectly game race. And Nube Negra's really thumped him. So it was a statement win. Obviously, as you say, there's 3 very, very good horses. Like, if Nube Negra was running like this 2 or 3 years ago when the Champion Chase maybe wasn't quite, or maybe was going into last year's Champion Chase in this form, then he'd had a massive chance. But he still has a very good chance come March, I'd say. He is the 4th best on that list, but does have still improvement to come.
The next race was the Greatwood and the Skeltons again. To be fair, this was a fantastic training performance from Dan. West Cork, 600 days off the track, wins the Greatwood. We know he's got a great record in the county hurdle, so those 2 mile big handicap hurdles around Cheltenham are right up his street. And I think West Cork will improve and is definitely a county hurdle contender. Now, I think he's going to go for that big Ladbrokes. I think it used to be the old Ladbrokes hurdle at Ascot before Christmas. I think that's next on the agenda. Be interesting to see what they do with him, because if he was to win again, you suspect the county hurdle would be out the picture. Again, I'd wrap him up in cotton wool and send him to the festival. But the National Hunt season isn't all about Cheltenham. What would you do with West Cork?
Yeah, very hard one to know. Obviously, you run the risk as well, because he hasn't been, he has been a little bit fragile. That if you wrapped him up in cotton wool and or saving him till March, a week before March, he suddenly would pick up an injury or something. So it is something you'd have to bear in mind. But if the Skeltons really, really want a winner at the Cheltenham Festival, you'd put him away, because that horse would have a miraculously good chance in the county hurdle, I'd have thought.
No Ordinary Joe was so keen all the way through this race, was tanking along and still tanking along coming down the hill. He pulled his way to the front. He was going so well, and I was so surprised that he still wasn't beaten a long way, beaten 2 or 3 lengths, and that was a real performance you could mark up. He's definitely not gone under the radar. Many people have picked up on that, but I definitely think he'll be winning races, and he's just got to learn to settle. Adagio finished 2nd. I thought it was a brilliant run. He'll go to the international hurdle now, and I think he'll take a fair bit of beating as well. I like to move it when the Supreme Novices hurdle trial. I always think that if you've finished a race with plenty of horse under you and you've not won the race, you've done something wrong. I definitely feel that was the case with Washington. He galloped all the way to the line. He was closing in on the line. He was, for me, just not put in the race at the right time coming down the hill. Sam Twiston Davies was always cajoling, I like to move it. We picked up on that on his first run, where he beat Troytown and Stephanie Causeway at the October meeting, and he was doing that again. I would have liked to have seen him just coming around the bend alongside and just let it happen. Aidan Coleman was chasing shadows coming up that hill. He was never getting to I Like to Move It, and it was a good ride from Sam Twiston Davies. I think both of them are good horses. Are either of them going to threaten the Supreme Novices hurdle market, or maybe I think both of them will probably be winning races between now and then?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd probably share your thoughts there. I just can't get away from that race, and I was going into the race thinking it, and I still feel it after the race, that Washington's the better horse of the 2. It was just one of those ones that just irritated you as a spectacle. They gave I Like to Move at 4 lengths out of the gate for free of charge, just sat off him completely, and Sam Twiston Davies was just constantly dictating. And even though Coleman didn't go after him, coming down the hill, which I can see why, maybe to try and make sure the horse finishes well, it got down to the last hurdle, and I always liked the style, and maybe others don't, but of Brian Cooper. Brian Cooper goes for that do or die jump at the last. You've got to send them, and sometimes they will come down. I understand that. I was at Leopardstown one Christmas. He did it on Course Sublime in the juvenile hurdle. The horse came down. But sometimes they absolutely ping it and land a half length down. And if he'd landed a half length down, and I like to move it, at the back of the last, he would have won the race, because he actually came up the hill better. But instead he sat, he popped, race was over. And it was just one of those, of almost all the races, it was just frustrating because you just felt it slightly got away.
Can you tell we backed it? And then the final race was the bumper, and I think this is a really good bumper. Orcan Risk was third, the favourite on the day. Flying Sarah is a really good mare. We don't see enough of her. She finished second. But Time for a Tune of Paul Nicholls went into the race having won at Chepstow, and he had to really tough it out that day and stay to the line. Fergal O'Brien's horse was travelling all over him. He showed a good side then, but he showed an even better side here. I just think this horse has got so much speed. He flew up that hill, and I'm in love with him. I think he's very, very smart, and he's going to be a brilliant novice hurdler next season. But definitely in Britain, I think Time for Tune is the best bumper horse. He looks very versatile. He looks quick. He looks like he stays. He looks very straightforward. It was a lot to like.
Yeah, I'd agree. I thought it was a really good bumper. Orcan Risk probably didn't do himself any favours by hanging to his left, and I think Shark's horse Hardy Fella ran a super race, considering he almost ducked out on the first turn. Adrian Heskin actually rode a very good race on him, hung right all the way. Wouldn't be surprised to see that horse on the sales pretty soon, and maybe at slightly higher up connections. Shark does that with a lot of his horses, obviously runs them well, and then they do tend to go on. But that horse Hardy Fella is a good horse, will win plenty of races.
So there we go, Cheltenham wrapped up. Over in Ireland, Sharjah won the Morgiana, and I think the cat is out the bag now. Zanahiyr doesn't have the pace for a champion hurdle. The big Doyen also in the bumper looked very good. He beat Cool Survivor, an expensive purchase for Gordon Elliott, and Jigginstown, interestingly, who's now supporting Gordon Elliott after all that fiasco last year. The big Doyen, however, won very impressively, beat him a long way. Do you think this horse could rank quite highly over in Ireland this season?
Oh yeah, I thought he was a super horse, and there's something about some of those Peter Fahey horses, when they can travel, they are good horses, and I think the big Doyen's really nice. It's obviously for slightly smaller connections as well. The Money for Jam Syndicate, great bunch of lads, and I saw their main talisman on Twitter saying he wasn't on sale for any price. So I think a lot of people think this horse is going to be sold. Looks like they won't be selling him. I think they've made up their mind that you could spend an awful lot of money trying to have a horse like him, and they're not going to pass this opportunity up, and more luck to them. I love seeing small syndicates do that, and I've got my fingers crossed that horse is just as good as he looks.
Let's now look ahead to the weekend's racing, and we'll start with the Grade 1 Betfair Chase at Haydock on Saturday. And I was looking at this race when the entries were out, and then the confirmations were in, and I was thinking, I don't like Bristol de Mai, especially not on this quick surface. Now, he's won on it before, but he's getting old. Then you're looking at the likes of Raw Guy, who probably won't run because of the ground. Native River won't run because of the ground. Imperial Aura bled last time. I don't like that angle. I just think A Plus Tard wins. He's got so much toe. He stays 3 miles. He's an economical jumper. Rachel Blackmore's coming over for the ride. Tick, tick, tick. I don't like to put up a favourite in a big race like this, but for me, A Plus Tard, 11 to 8, whatever price he is, I think he's going to win this. And I think he's going to win it well. I think he'll really put a stamp on that Gold Cup division. What do you think? Tricky one.
Yeah, tricky one. I think the big races this year or this weekend are very hard from a betting perspective. I can see your point with A Plus Tard. Would I back him at 11 to 8? No. I'd certainly let him win at that price, considering he's been beaten 3 times fresh. For Henry before, usually takes a massive step from first run to second run.
That was over 2 miles though.
Yeah, no, but he was beaten last year by Castle Grace Paddy, Josh, and I'd almost back you to beat Castle Grace Paddy. So that's just poor form in the book, and I do understand that, but I just couldn't be backing him myself at 11 to 8. If you were giving me 9 to 4, 5 to 2, I'd be more thinking about it. I just don't think it's a very good price. I don't think almost anything in this is a great price, to be honest. It's almost fooled me 4 times with Bristol de Mai. Will he end up going and doing it again? He might well do so. I again wouldn't back him, but I'd be very interested to see how Waiting Patiently runs. obviously for Christian Williams, fingers crossed that at some stage that horse will get his day in the sun and Brian Hughes will sluice through them all and wave his whip to the crowd. Like, that's something I'd absolutely love to see, but it's going to be a race I'm probably just going to sit back and watch and see what happens, because A Plus Tard, if you remember from last March, not a horse that does it for me really. So I'll be willing to let him win at 11-8.
Let's move over to Ascot then, and it's the Grade 2 1965 chase. Do you like anything in this?
Another hard race. Dashel Drasher I'd like to take on again when being fresh, and also looks a complicated ride, and he's going to have a new jockey on board, of course, given the circumstances. Itchy Feet, it seemed from Ollie Murphy that he won't run at Ascot. I thought he'd have a good chance in this. He might run at Haydock instead. Do you trust Lost in Translation? I suppose Tizard's worked the Oracle on a few of these. Eldorado Allen, Fiddler on the Roof, these horses that you didn't think could almost ever win a race again. This horse,
Brendan Powell, is brilliant as well.
Yeah, he's absolutely superb, and he's riding out of his skin, and more luck to him. He might carry a few quid of mine, but it wouldn't be one of my stronger ones.
Yeah, I was looking at this and trying to convince myself that Master Tommy Headbutter was going to win it, and I can't see that. The Grade 2 Ascot Hurdle over 2 miles and 3 furlongs. Buzz comes back, the Cesarewitch winner. Many thinking that he could be a stayers hurdle horse. I'm not so sure. I've got to be kind. I share an office with Jess Stafford, whose family own Buzz. I think he's been doing work with Epatante, and he's looked brilliant in the videos that I've seen. And I would like to see him win this, but if Goshen turns up, which is doubtful because of the ground, if he turns up at his very best, it's right-handed, I don't think Buzz will beat him. You've got Song for Someone in there, Stormy Island, Unknown Quantities. Just a tricky race again. I don't fancy anything in the 1965 chase. I don't fancy anything in this. It's going to be a sit back and watch. Do I think Buzz is good enough? Definitely. If the ground isn't suitable on Saturday, they're going to go to the long distance hurdle because they definitely need a run in before Christmas. What do you think of this?
Another hard race, because you think Buzz should win, but at the same stage, I'm not going to be backing Buzz at 11-10 or 5-4, whatever price he is. It's an absolutely rubbish price for a horse that couldn't get past Abacadabras, who's one of the biggest dodge pots in the game at Aintree. I know people want to say that form is good, but I just don't think it is, personally, over 2.5 miles. I think Buzz, he's obviously a very good improving horse, and with the English division the way it is, he could make up into a stairs hurdle horse, but I'm yet to see the angle behind it myself. I thought the Skelton's horse in this, Molly's Ollie's Wishes, might have had a chance if you got an each way price about her, if you got 6-1, 7-1.
We said this at the start of the season. With horses like that, looking forward down the line, you might be slightly disappointed if a Molly's Ollie's Wishes won. Yeah,
you would be, but at the same stage, you don't know kind of where her progression is going to stop. She's still very young, and she's obviously won a few nice races in the last couple of starts. But I'd be with you. The ones you want to see win are Buzz or Goshen, because Goshen can be a freak, and Buzz could be the improver of the lot. But I'm not going to be a person that's backing Goshen. I don't think he'll run on good ground as well. And Buzz is 11-10, so I'd let him fly by. So maybe Molly's Ollie's Wishes.
Tricky racing. We'll go over to Ireland, and I know you'll have one for this. It's the Troytown, a big handicap chase, and I put up a Blue Tard in the Betfair Chase. I'm going to put up another joint favourite in Farkless here. He's proven on the ground. He'll love the trip. He'll love a very strongly run race, and Farkless to get the job done for me. I think he's 7-1. I'll be backing him if he runs. What about yourself?
Yeah, good race. Obviously, the Troytown being run on good ground on Sunday, which is going to be bizarre. I think it won't have that big a field as it usually does. Obviously, my man is in there, Run Wild Fred. He got pulled out last weekend on yielding ground because it was unsuitable, so I can't see him running. He does have a big handicap in him, so keep your eyes peeled, especially on slightly softer ground. Two horses that I liked at big prices, 10-10. For the Dempseys, I think is a good horse, especially on a bit of better ground. He's around 10-12-1. Was just a neck behind Brahma Bull over 3 miles of Punchestown. I think that's not bad form. And Discortantly for Jessie at 18-1. Some of her jumpers have ran very well this year. He's had a wind up. He's better on good ground, and bits and bobs of his form would indicate that he'd have a sniff in this, especially at 18-1. So two likely runners, and fingers crossed they both run well at each way prices.
Andrew, tell me about your best bets of the weekend.
Yeah, I've only got the 3. I think it's hard racing out there. One that you're going to have to be quick enough to look at is actually coming today at Thurles. At 1 o'clock, it was a really trappy little 3 mile novices hurdle. I like Mr. Josie Wales. He's around 3 to 1, 10 to 3 at the time of recording for Dermot McLaughlin. The last race at Haydock, a 3 mile 1 furlong handicap chase. I like Fortescue for the dailies of 139. He's around 12 to 1. Not a bad each way price, I don't think. And then I'm going to go for the bigger priced one in the Troytown, Discordantly at 18 to 1. I think he's got a decent chance, a couple of pounds lower than went fourth in the race last year.
We need to bounce back after last week. It was disappointing. I'm going to go for a few on Friday at Ascot. Captain Morgs in the 2:40 2 miles handicap hurdle at Ascot. I think he's 5 to 2. They won the race with Verdana Blue and Buzz last year. I think he's better than his mark of 125, and he could be very, 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 very difficult to beat on Friday. And then another one at Baddesley at 100 to 30 in the 3:50 2 miles and 5 furlong novices handicap hurdle. It's his handicap debut. He's much better than 111 in my eyes, and I think he will also take a lot of the beating if he runs. 2 more as well. I'm not sure what price they are, but I think they will be declared, but they're also in novice races, so I'm not 100% sure. Saturday, Flemingstide in the 2 miles and 5 furlong novices hurdle at Ascot. Now, Paul Nicholls has been very, very patient with this horse. They bought him for €325,000, and it's been a slow burner. It's been a project, but I know they think he's very good. It'd be his hurdling debut. I think they would expect a good run from him, and I think it'd be too good and will win if he runs. And then on Sunday, the Skeltons send a Message Personal, who's owned by John Hales, to Exeter, funnily enough, and he runs in the 12:30 2 miles juvenile hurdle. And I've been told that he's a big, strong 3-year-old. He almost looks like a 5 or 6-year-old, and I think they think a lot of him. So, Message Personnel. And then a couple of youngsters to watch as well. Saint Felician looks like he could make his debut for Gordon Elliott. He's bought by Rob Corr, very impressive winner in France. The 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th have all come out of that race and won since. Saturday, Gowran Park. He won't be a novice in March, so don't get sucked into Cheltenham Festival anti-post talk. He obviously won a race over hurdles in France before the cut-off point, so he won't be eligible for something like the Supreme Novices Hurdle, but I've heard he's a flying machine. I've heard they think a lot of him. I will be hoping, praying, watching the TV that is the case, and Saint Felician can make a striking impression on debut. And then Fleuron for Gordon Elliott as well. Navan Sunday maiden hurdle, the same maiden hurdle as Journey With Me is entered in, over 2.5 miles. Be interesting to see if they both run. So there's 2 youngsters to watch. But thank you very much for watching this video. We do hope you enjoyed our Cheltenham coverage of the November meeting. Best of luck for the weekend, and we'll speak to you next Thursday.